Try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right.
Good morning.
Here. Okay. Well, having computer issues this morning, so I don't know what the heck is wrong with my dinosaur computer, but it seems to be working okay now. And then when I went to start the class, then I realized that I'm about to talk about one of my favorite formulas, absolutely one of my favorite formulas for dampness. And then I don't know who's responsible for this, but nobody made a slide. And then I was trying to make a slide while I had trouble logging into the classroom. So yeah, that's it. That's the slide. Sorry. You use your imagination. And then the signs and symptoms you should just be taking out of the Bensky book, right? Because that's the official California Acupuncture Board approved presentation. Though I don't think this is a state board formula, which is probably why somehow I overlooked it. But it's a fave. It's good, and you're gonna like it too. So without further ado, first of all, I guess any questions need to be addressed. Otherwise, let the babbling begin. I'm taking the silence as, nope, everything's clear, let's roll. So let's roll. So yeah, I'm sorry, but this mouse. So I don't have the signs and symptoms up there. I don't know if you guys even look at it, to be honest. Maybe it's too hard to see and you just use your textbook to follow along, which is probably better, but I got something. So this formula has actually gotten pretty popular with, I see a lot of people in forums talking about the formula within the last 3 years. I think part of it is that somebody wisely saw that maybe none of the granular extract companies had a product with this because it's aromatic and it's really hard to make a good quality granular extract. And I wonder about the one they came out with. Moving on. So anyway, then they started promoting this formula, and now I think maybe people are overusing it, but it's a fantastic formula. It's very, very useful. Very, very useful. So maybe I don't ever use the formula the way the original author intended when put it together. So this is from the warm disease school, and this is from Wu Zhutong, who is probably, like, Ye Tianshi is the person that started the Wei Qi Yin Xue, right? And then Dr. Wu then read all of that, incorporated it, because it's from the mind of a genius, and also being a genius added, and so we credit him for adding the Sanjiao diagnostic system to the warm disease school. And he has a very famous warm disease book. And one reason I really like this formula is that the sanzhen means 3 kernels or seeds, right? I don't know, zi is seed, and then zhen is seed. Maybe there's a distinction in how we see them. So anyway, that combination is really from Ye Tianshi, and Ye Tianshi has maybe written about over 75 formulas using these 3 seeds. And then Wu Zhutong, who put this formula together, used that idea, having read Ye Tianshi's writings and really being aware of it, and then added a pair that's also very interesting. And one thing that's really, really interesting, and I need the illustration, and I usually would be like writing on the board a lot with this one, is here's a formula where we can really understand kind of in a geographic sense, like where is the field of operation, right? What part of the body does something work in, or parts, right? And then that's part of how maybe we choose, like, what do I need to deal with? Where is it? How do I deal with it? And then that kind of helps you when you're trying to modify a formula. And then a lot of times we'll just use stuff because we know, like, okay, well, this is a very famous combination, so I'm just going to put it in my formula. But other times when you got to map things out, it's like, okay, so what am I trying to deal with? How is it dealt with by the body when it's working correctly? How can I use combination of herbs to basically reinstate the dynamic, right? The yang dynamics. So you may remember from formulas 1, and then you learn about ma huang tang, right? And then ma huang tang, you have ma huang and xing ren, and then ma huang diffuses the lungs, xing ren down bears the lungs. Okay, and then there's a pair that's reinstating proper physiology, right? So you see that a lot in formulas when you take the time to break it down and analyze it. And so it's not just they taste good together or something, but a lot of times they're paired together, one, because they're harmonious, and two, because they are helping to work along the normal physiological pathways of the body. Of course, we're talking about in Chinese medical thinking. Okay, so this is a formula, and we'll talk about it a bit. This is a formula where we can see that things were combined, and then they're kind of incorporating. There's like a relay race. Okay, so I guess just while I'm on this, then I just make this sidebar. So when we're in foundations and we learn about the lungs, we learn about the lungs govern diffusion. And then we learn this thing in Nigel Wiseman terminology that the lungs govern depurative downbearing, which is his translation of su jiang. Su jiang is like to sweep down, like to sweep and keep themselves clean from phlegm. And that's what depurate actually means. So this sweeping down of the lungs, where does it sweep it to? Well, ultimately to your colon, which is, metal, that's, lungs and colon, metal, sweep the garbage down, poop it out. Okay. But in between is the stomach in the middle. So actually the lungs sweep down to the stomach, and then the stomach and the intestines are a system called yangming. So from the lungs to the stomach, to the colon, out of you. That's how we get rid of the turbidity that's in the lungs that we need to sweep clean from. Okay, so we're going to see this in action with this formula. So sanren tang, so ujitong, then when we study wen bing xue, right? So the warm disease school, and then they have very different, right? So we study Shahanlun, and then most modern people say, oh, it talks about wind and cold, and a lot of times we call it wind cold. And then Wen Bing, it's not only that they have a different layered system. Instead of using 6 conformations, they use 4 levels, right? Wei Qi Yin Xue and Sanjiao, right? So you could have Qi level upper burner, Qi level middle burner, blah, blah, blah. Not only that, but depending on who you read, there isn't just one warm pathogen. There's all kinds of warm pathogens. Some list 8, some list 9. Okay, and then a lot of them are seasonal, and so you can have autumn cool dryness and autumn warm dryness and winter warmth and things like that. And one of them is called shiwen. Shiwen is damp, right? We talked about shi, we talked about the character, right? So damp. And then wen is the same as in wen bing, warm. So damp warmth. Damp warmth. To me, that's a tongue twister, so I have a hard time saying it. So I'll probably stumble over it more than a couple of times. Okay, so this formula he did for the onset stage of damp warmth. And, not only do we have the pandemic that we've been facing for a year and a half or so, or even longer than that now. Not only that, but then there's, remember when you were younger and they had things called cold and flu? Yeah, there wasn't just the worldwide pandemic, there was colds and flu, and then colds come from all kinds of different classes of viruses. We just kind of throw them in as a kind of a catch-all phrase, right? Or we could just say upper respiratory tract infection. And one of the biggest mistakes, the first biggest mistake in clinic is jumping to conclusions. And then the next one is, this is a great idea, is you responded to the formula, therefore I just keep giving it to you in the hopes that you'll somehow get cured by one magic formula. And, sometimes, certainly there's formulas where you have to give them long term. But then also, why did you give the formula? Let's just assume you are bullseye with your formula. Why'd you give it to them? Because of their presentation. Now their presentation changes. Why would you continue to give the same formula, right? If their presentation is improving, but still the basic presentation, you would continue to give the same formula as they resolve it. But and Gamal is a great example of the early stage, and we've all had it. When you first are coming down with something is very different than 2 days later, very different than 2 days after that. Why would you keep taking the same formula? Like in Formulas 1, we talked about Yin Chao San, and then I see people, they say, oh, I've been taking it for a week and it's not helping. It's like, yeah, because that's for the first day. And then you just probably been messing yourself up by taking it for 6 more days. It's for onset stage. Okay, so why are you resolving the exterior when it's in the interior? Because, this is kind of, we can't escape the 21st century. And then mostly with mainstream medicine, when they find the drug, then you're on it until you're resolved or you're on it for forever. And that infects our thinking, and it's not right. I give you this formula for a day or two. Just yesterday, the patient with the Gamal, right? Not the scary one, right? Not the Delta, but so, and then just give one bag, double boil. You can use it for 2 days. And then how come only one bag? Because everything's going to change in the next couple of days. And then this isn't the magic. And this is maybe infected by germ theory. This isn't an anti-whatever virus. It's help you based on how you're presenting. So this formula originally was for the onset stage of one of the warm evils called damp warmth. Okay. And then another thing that the warm disease school and this formula represents is, great understanding. Like we say 2 evils, wind cold, wind heat, damp heat, or damp warmth, right? It kind of sounds like it's just 50-50, like it's a defined entity. It's not. You can have anywhere from like 99% one, I mean, not really, but 99% one and only 1% of the other, all the way to the opposite, 1% and 99% and everything in between. But we can't quantify these things. So we basically need to have these 3 ideas, right? When you have 2 evils, let's just say damp warmth, because that's what it is. You got damp and you've got some kind of heat, warm pathogen. Okay. So is it mostly damp and a little bit of heat? Is it damp and heat equal? Or is it mostly heat and a little bit of damp? Right. And so every time you're looking at multiple wind, cold, damp, it's a mistake to think that they just somehow equal. They're not. They're not. They might be, but there's more likelihood that one predominates over the other. So this is onset stage, early stage with damp heavier than heat. Okay. And then when you look at the signs and symptoms, you can kind of see that there's an emphasis on the damp. It's just, that's the way it is. So speaking of signs and symptoms, and the other thing is, so especially with Wen Bing, but it should help us understand every time we're dealing with somebody with heat, where's the heat? Is it in the chi layer? Is it in the blood layer, right? Where is it? Is it in this organ and that organ? Is it in the upper burner? Is it in the lower burner? Where is whatever evil? Location, location, location. Because how I resolve it, if I'm good, you can be right and say that they have heat, and then it's in the blood layer and you're clearing out the exterior. You're not, and then you could be confused, but it's heat and I treated heat and then they're not getting better. They're getting worse. Yeah, maybe because you're not treating at the right layer. And if you don't get where the problem is, you're not going to resolve it. You can't think that I'm going to resolve it by making you sweat when it's in your blood. No, I don't think so. You need to clear heat, cool the blood if that's where it is, right? So this heat is in the qi division, wei, qi, yin, xue, right? So wei, qi, yin, xue, the 4 levels. So that's the way these people think, because he's highly influenced by Ye Tianshi, who's the guy that started all that stuff. Okay. Okay. So anyway, early stage damp warmth, not advanced, whatever, is going to look different. Damp more than heat, heat in the chi layer, right? So I need to work with heat in the chi layer. Okay. So then if you have the book, and I don't have the book in front of me, but you know, things that are famous for this is that they have headache. And then we know damp headaches have that feeling like you have a wet towel wrapped around your head, right? So it has a heavy sensation. All heavy sensations are ascribed to damp, right? So, and then maybe they have like a mild aversion to cold, mild aversion to wind. And then they have like heavy, cumbersome limbs. Maybe they have like a kind of a heavy aching pain in their body. And then also dampness, usually that heaviness, they might articulate it to you as being really stiff. Like they're stiff. I feel really stiff and achy. And well, you're stiff because it hurts so much you can't move it that farther. No, it's just like I can't move it that far. It's weird, right? Stiff. And we really need to hear these things and not try to project in, you know, have them clarify, make sure I understand. And then if they say it's stiff, maybe they know because they're experiencing it. Okay. Now, when you have damp heat, you might see some kind of jaundicing. It depends on the patient's host complexion, et cetera, right? But damp heat, so you could see some yellowing in the complexion. I wouldn't expect like this thing that it's like, whoa, right? Like, wow. No, but if you're good with your vision, good with color observation skills, you might notice, especially if you knew the patient, you know, they weren't just a brand new patient. And then when you have damp, especially in the upper burner, then you expect some kind of stuffy sensation, right? So chest depression, if you're using Nigel's terminology, stifling sensation is probably what Bensky is saying, right? So, and then as it affects the middle burner, you know, food doesn't really have much flavor, and you definitely have poor appetite, right? Which we've seen with the previous ones. If it's in the middle burner and it's leaking down to the lower burner, then we can see the dampness, and then we would expect to see sticky stool, soft stool, that kind of stuff. Okay. And then, you know, damp heat problem. So Yangming, yin xu, right? Yin deficiency and damp heat problems all have late afternoon tidal fever. I will spare you the rant on tidal fever, but again, don't assume that, oh, they have tidal fever, that means they have yin deficiency. No, it doesn't. It might be they have yin deficiency. They might have damp heat or yangming, right? And it's not that hard to differentiate it, but if you jump to conclusions, you'll convince yourself and you won't even ask the questions. So you should always in clinic, always be thinking, I wonder why they have that. I wonder why that's happening. Yeah, and then if they have dampness, generally speaking, they're not really thirsty, or if they drink, then it doesn't really feel good, right? Because they have damp in the middle. So like my mouth is dry, so I drank water, but then it's like kind of just sat there. It wouldn't metabolize. Yeah, because you know, you can think of osmosis and everything. If you you know, if you're into a very dry, arid, it will suck the fluids out of you. And if you're very humid, it's not really very efficient to move fluids from inside of you to outside. So same thing with your stomach, of course. So if my stomach has water in it, but there's dampness around my stomach, it's not that amenable to moving it out of my stomach. So it just kind of sits there and happens really slowly. And that we don't like that, right? We don't like it. Okay. So, other thing I would want to see is you look at their tongue coat. Whenever you're thinking about damp, always look at their tongue coat. Always look at their tongue coat, right? So we should have kind of a thick, turbid. There's all kinds of different ways we could see turbid, right? So greasy or slippery, greasy and slippery, Yeah, so turbid kind of tongue coat. And to the degree there's heat, there might be a little bit of yellowing or something like that. But early stage, and if it's damp predominant, I wouldn't expect it to be like, you've seen like greasy yellow, thick tongue coating. I wouldn't expect it to be that yellow. I'd have to scratch my head and say, I wonder why that is. And then the pulse could be a lot of things. Could be a lot of things because damp, can your body's ability to struggle with it, whatever, right? So it could be floating fine and forceless. It could be wiry. It could be a lot of different things. Oops, now I see you in the chat. Everybody hear me okay? Sorry, I didn't notice I was staring off into space, running my mouth. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So then I will continue. So let's look at, so that's a basic idea of the presentation. Okay, so just this is how I roll, or whatever people say nowadays. This formula was developed motivated by dealing with early onset damp warmth in contagious diseases in the, early Qing dynasty, yada, yada, yada. Okay. But what happens is when you have damp warmth, it interferes with your internal alchemy. It interferes with your quote unquote physiology. And then here we go again. But yeah, I don't care how you got here, you're here. And that's the way I really look at it. Like, I want to understand what's going on. Why is it going on? And what can I do to help you? Okay. What's going on? Why is it going on? And what can I do to help you? So if what's going on is you have damp with some kind of heat and you're having this presentation, then this formula can probably help you. Whether you got it from what Wu Zhetong was seeing back in the day, if you have some completely other kind of contagious disease, or if it has nothing to do with infectious disease, it's some internally, it doesn't matter to me. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? Guess what's for dinner? Duck. It's autumn. You should be eating more duck. Okay, so then we're going to look at the san zhen, the three zhen. And what do we know about zhen? They always have some kind of moistening. It's very, very interesting, right? So what is dampness? I ask you, I got speaker on real quickly. When I have damp inside, no matter where it came from, what is it?
Yin turbid evil.
Okay, that's a way to describe it. But what is it? Yeah. So that's correct. But what is it? Yeah, damp is a yin turbid evil. Yes, material affected by gravity. Absolutely true. What is it? Where did it come from?
Liquid.
Could you repeat that? I'm getting very little audio through.
Oh, fluid, liquid.
Yeah. So evil damp is nothing other than my own fluids that are not contained properly. They're not moving and transforming properly. Therefore, they can't circulate and do their job, which is to moisten and construct the body. Once they're not doing that, they are evil. Okay. But they didn't come from, I don't know, they didn't come from Mars. They're my fluids. Okay. My inability to interact with the world around me might be why I can't vent my fluids, so they kind of collect and stagnate, and then they're damp. Or because I eat lots of ice cream and potato chips, and then then it's making a bunch of fluids, but it was my fluids. Okay, that's what damp is, right? That's why I think that, okay, if it's in this situation, this formula can help this person. Well, they don't have a contagious disease. I don't care. I don't care. They're experienced. Then this is, and then you got to keep changing your formulas. You have to stop thinking I'm going to find that one magic formula and give it to you, and that's all you need. No. Okay, so this is part of the reason why we might use some kind of moistening in the treatment of damp, because if it's too damp somewhere, what's an assumption that I will make?
It's dry someplace else.
Exactly, right? I only have finite fluids. It's not like I have some magic gravitational field inside of me that's emptying the Pacific Ocean and it's going inside of me. It's just how much fluids I have. So if my fluids are stagnated here, somewhere else is crying for more fluids, which might be why you're thirsty. But then when you drink, because it's stagnated there, I can't metabolize it. So it feels crappy to drink water. Make sense? Okay. So anyway, now we talk about the herbs. So we got the sanzhen, and that's actually from Ye Tianshih's writing that, Wuzitong, then in great admiration and respect. And then, if something's really good combination of herbs, I'm going to steal it. And I don't care about intellectual property rights. I'm not making any claims. I just look for things people have figured out that they work really good together. Great. That's something I want. I'm not looking for new combinations no one ever thought of. I'm looking to learn things that are proven to work, because that's what I want to use on myself, right? Proven to work together. And then in what situation? And how do I know the situation? Signs and symptoms. So learning signs and symptoms is one of the most important things you can do. And it's boring. And that's why a lot of people, I saw somebody put together trying to teach a diagnosis course and nobody signed up. I'm like, yeah, I know how that is. Ha ha. Nobody wants to. It's boring. So anyway, sanzhen, the 3 zhen. First one I would say is, I don't know that when it's called 3 seed, then you can say any of the seeds is the emperor. But I'm going to call the xingzhen the emperor. This is a great medicinal that a lot of people overlook. It's really very useful in our patient population. There's 2 kinds of xingzhen. I think we talked about it before, right? So who remembers? 2 kinds.
北星人 and 南星人.
Yeah. So northern and southern. What's the difference?
南星人 is for food. 北星人 is a little bit toxic, slightly toxic.
Yeah, we don't care about that. Toxic is good. Yeah, I mean, plutonium toxic, not good. But, Chinese herb toxic. All the herbs are a little bit toxic. So the main thing for me is the flavor. So the southern is sweet and like people use it to make food things. And then the northern, bei, is cool. It's bitter. And what's the function of bitter? It reinstates metal's mandate to descend. Bitter is the flavor that basically replicates the right-hand side of Taiji Tu, right? So if we had classes together, you've seen me use that over and over and over again. And then maybe in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, why does this guy keep coming back to this? Because that's where it all comes from. That is it. That is it. And the more I can understand it, the more everything starts to become really clear, right? So it reinstates metal's mandate to move down. By doing that, it brings heat down, therefore clears heat, and then also has this drying quality. Okay, so make sure if you're buying it, because sometimes I see distributors and they have a really good sale price on some xingzhen, and then don't fall for it because that's the southern. And it says so. They're not hiding it. They just, that's real good price. But I don't want that one. I want the cool, right? So then it helps the lungs. Sujiang helps them to descend. So we know, they downbear lung qi. In Shanhan Lun, xingzhen is for chuan, panting. It is never, ever, ever used for cough in Shanhan Lun. Later generations do use it for cough, and I guess they do because it works, right? So when you read one source or people prejudiced by one source, they'll say it's only for panting. Well, that's in that book, it was only used for panting, but later generations used it. And, I don't think people hand down ideas that don't work. Here's a book full of ideas that don't work. Want to buy it? No. Okay, so We also know that because it is a quintessential manifestation of metal, then it affects the lungs and also the large intestines. Large intestine has a moistening quality and helps to free the stool. It does not make, I've never seen anybody say, oh my God, it gave me diarrhea. Okay. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. Then it has a strong qi moving quality, not as strong as some other herbs. It's not the strongest, but it's got a really nice qi moving quality to help move down, right? So the bitter taste has got a moving quality, and then a bitter taste, the movement is down, right? And so this by itself is going to help dry excessive dampness and to reinstate the qi movement of the lungs, which is part of what we want to do. So when you have any kind of dampness, right, it doesn't have to be like a lot of times the books will say fluid stagnation. It makes you think like, you've got 200 milliliters of water in your lungs. No, it doesn't have to be that. It's just damp. So just when it's too damp, then you start to feel this and you feel stuffy sensation in the chest, right? So that can lead to chuan, panting. So of course, should be just like, boom, there we go, right? So by descending the lung qi, it also helps descend the fluids. All movement and transformation is because of qi. So I move the lung qi down, helps to start guiding the fluids down and dry the excessive dampness, the excessive humidity in the upper burner. But I don't want to overdo that, right? And then when I descend it, where do I descend it to? Oh my God, it's just the beginning of the day. Okay, so up there, I think you can kind of see, though I know the way it comes across the internet is probably lame. And then it descends it down to the middle, right? The middle burner, we got two parts. One is the stomach, which is a hollow organ that can actually have physical things in it. And two is the spleen. So the spleen governs movement and transformation. And we primarily apply that to the fluids, right? So then we bring it to the middle. Stomach can, put it on a conveyor belt downward, and the spleen is like activating, moving, and transforming. Okay. So, the problem is, okay, so now I'm delivering my dampness onto you. And you're like, yeah, I can help you with that, Uncle Steve. I said, really great. Here's some more. Okay, here's some more. And here's some more. And at some point you're like, okay, this is more than I can deal with. Okay. And so what happens is by getting it out of the upper burner, which is what we need to do, and then moving it to the middle, which is correct. Then we got to think about the middle, like, oh my, what am I doing to the middle burner? I'm making it damp, right? So I need to help it. And then we can look at Baikogen. So maybe it says Baidoko, right? Okay, right? So from other sources, then they say Baikogen. Baikogen is like when you look at Baidoko, you've got the husk or shell on the outside and the zhen on the inside. And so then, when you get somebody and they say, oh, can I work in your clinic and you teach me, you say, okay, well, we're just cleaning up right now. So here, take all the husks off that Baidoko, save the husks over here and save the zhen in that other jar. Then, yeah, anyway, that's how you get broken in, right? So Baikogen, you remove the husks and you just keep the kernels, right? The zhen. And then normally you would like grind them up to release the essential oils from it. And then that part is more potent at moving qi and transforming damp. It's better at warming the stomach and then also down bare the stomach to relieve nausea. Okay, so the husk has a function, the zhen have a function. When we use it together, we crack it open, and right. But if I take off the husk, then the 10 grams of just the zhen, right? So maybe in 10 grams with the husk, only going to just make something up. 6.75 grams are actually zhen. So if I take the husk off, then all 10 grams are zhen. And it's more of that function. So it does make a difference. And a lot of times, like if I want to do this, then a lot of times I will, like crack it off and take the husks off for the patient. But it's kind of time consuming. So, yeah. So, and then, this is one of these things where I like to lecture in person and then pass you know, but we all know different kinds of cardamom, right? So you can think, and then I forget who said it or where I got it from originally, but the quote that I have down for this is that it has a wonderful, clear, refreshing chi. Oh yeah, and especially as somebody who is, you know, admittedly struggles with dampness, then if you have damp, then maybe you really enjoy the smell and taste and experience of a lot of these kind of drying aromatic herbs. And then somebody who's really dry inside, they'll be like, they don't like it. Make sense? Think about it, right? Like maybe you're really attracted to it because you need it. Maybe. Okay. So with the aroma, remember, aroma is penetrating, right? Just like it permeates through the room, right? If you're like cracking and doing stuff with, in this case, maybe a kind of cardamom, right, at home, and then wow, right, the kitchen air could be filled with a wonderful, clear, refreshing chi. So then it goes further and says that it's acrid, right, or pungent. Warm aroma expedites, dredges, and mobilizes the sanjiao. Beautiful, right? Because aroma, it will rise to the upper burner. Because of its warmth and descending nature, it helps the lower burner. And then by activating everything, it's moving things down and helping to, you know, because it's activated, then helping to process things through the lower burner. It's great medicinal. It's very useful because we got a lot of people with damp problems, right? So this is helping the middle burner. So Xingren, I'm like sweeping down saying, here, 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 help me, help me. And then this is like, okay, right? So your physiology is trying to help you. Maybe you got a lot to dump on it. So then you use this one to help the problem of the dampness and help promote the physiology of the middle burner. Freaking brilliant, brilliant. Then the third zhen is yi zhen. Yi zhen, this is food, okay? Yeah, just Saturday, I don't know. It's all a blur. Saturday, I think it was, then trying to convince somebody with dampness to stop eating oatmeal and cream of wheat every morning. And then let me introduce you to your new porridge. And, you know, so it's food and it makes a good porridge and it's a good thing. You're not going to eat it every day. I don't know why somebody eat the same breakfast every morning. Kind of weird. But eat it some mornings and then cut back on the cream of wheat because that's not your friend. Okay, so Yi-Zhen, we know that it resolves dampness and it functionally supplements the spleen. It also is food, so, you know, it nutritionally supplements the middle, but it also functionally supplements the spleen by drying it, right? And so it also has a heat clearing, so it kind of clear heat, dry, damp function. Not that strong, but sometimes we don't want that strong, right? Clear heat, dry, damp, then you think of, you know, Huang Qin, Huang Lian, Huang Bai. So in the middle burner, Huang Lian, do you really want to use that? That kind of not really good friends with the spleen. This one is. So when it's not that intense heat, right? It's not that much heat in this one. It's not that intense heat. Don't use a sledgehammer to pound in a regular nail, right? You know, or those things that they used to use on a railroad to put the spikes in. That's for putting railroad spikes in. So I don't need to. A lot of times people think that, oh, you know, I'm going to come in with the strong herbs. That's not the right way, actually. The right way is with finesse. It's the right herb at the right time. 4 ounces deflects 10,000 pounds. That's what you want. That's what you want because of really strong herbs. Also, everything has consequences, right? So if you use too strong, bitter, really cold or whatever, sure, right? But then you can also cause a lot of problems like Bensky calls clumping. So yeah, kind of like binding or something. You cause some new problem that's harder to treat. So don't do it, okay? So Yi-Zhen, then we know that it has an affinity for the middle burner, and then also the lower burner. So you can see Xingren, it has an affinity for the upper and the lower, exiting dregs out the back. By Koren, actually the upper and the middle, and then helps to send down to the lower. And then Yi-Zhen is the middle and the lower and more about urination. Now you can see why I'm like, oh my God, this combination is brilliant. This is why we study formulas, is then you start to learn these things, analyze it, break it down, and then you're like, because not only does it help us understand the usage of these three zhen, right, from a genius, but also it should help you understand, even with acupuncture, like, how do I pick the points I want to use? Well, maybe I want to use points in combination that will help reinstate proper physiology and let your body deal with the problem, help it deal with the problem. Okay, so the main function of these three herbs is it helps to gather the dampness from all three burners and put it on the conveyor belt that ends up through elimination, right? And not forcefully trying to make you urinate and defecate, just moving it down there and letting the body. We can use other herbs to maybe activate those systems. Okay, so that's from, like I said, like 75, 80 times Yetinshir in his writings evoked or invoked these three. And so Wu Zhitong said, like, yeah, man, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I don't need to reinvent hot water because Yetinshir already invented it. But then he said, I got to put my mark on it, right? So then this pair is accredited to Wu Zhitong. Now, Hua Shi is a little controversial with us nowadays. So Spring Wind, their Hua Shi is tested by some German lab whose name I can't pronounce, so I can't remember it, because that's the way it works a lot of times. So, but it's tested no asbestos, because if you know then where they get talc, then maybe that's how they discovered asbestos in the beginning. Asbestos is like bad, right? I mean, it's bad. They used to think back in when they first discovered it, they used to think it was a miracle because it was great at thermal insulation, sound insulation. They put it in the ceiling tiles, put it in the walls, put it in a bunch of places. Then they found that, yeah, if you breathe in even a tiny bit, you're probably going to get cancer from it. So then banned, right? So Hua Shi, yeah, Spring Wind tested, no amount of asbestos is tolerated, okay? And even then, you might really have some hesitancy. It's understandable. It's understandable. Taking that away, then Hua Shi and Tong Cao are maybe, could say that the three are the ruling trifecta, and this pair is like minister, okay? And this is more about the fluid pathways. Yeah, the pathway. So you can think of the word tong, right? That's like, we don't like tong, that's pain. We like tong, right? Like there's a herb, lu tong, right? Which grows around here. The tree grows around here a lot. So that means like all pathways are open. This is about open and moving, okay? Open and moving. So tong cao is sweet and bland, and we know it disinhibits urination to clear heat. Okay, and then also has this like miracle thing that it connects with the stomach to bring nutrients to the breasts for helping with promoting lactation. So it's light. When you get it, it looks like the old packing stuff that, if you ever had to do shipping or you got shipments a lot, then they used to use all this kind of packing material that they don't use anymore because it was really bad for the environment. So, but it looks like that. It's very, very lightweight, right? Like it comes in a huge bag, not standard size bag when you buy it. Many people will substitute, and I do too, substitute mu tong, right? Mu tong. So, just different way to do it. But yeah, so this light qi, then it floats up, but it has a down bearing, right? If it promotes lactation, then, urination, if it promotes urination, then it also has a downward movement, right? So that's a nice thing, is that it'll float to the upper burner and then descend from the upper burner. Okay, so that will help to drain stagnating damp and heat down through the pathways, right? And then 滑湿, then, we learned that about summer heat. So summer heat is dampness and heat, right? Summer heat is kind of damp heat. So here we could see, okay, it does make sense. It also percolates damp, so it helps to disinhibit urination. And it's talc, it's powdered, but it's a rock. So a rock has heavy weight. So you have the tongsao, which is light and floats on water, right? And then we have this, which is a rock that sinks. So this pair, one floats up to the upper, starts moving downward because it does work with urination. And then 滑湿 then sinks and then helps to promote urination, right? So then it sinks and then helps to open up the downward passages for the fluids to move through. And then it has this function that's like it lubricates, right? So then it lubricates the waterways. So sometimes you'll see books, well, they'll talk about rough urination, right? Like a rough, it's not really pain, it's just kind of a rough, inhibited feeling. Sometimes they would say astringent urination, which doesn't make a lot of sense because they're translating "se." "Se" is like choppy pulse or rough pulse, and then really bad translation, astringent pulse. And there's a reason why it has all those translated words. But anyway, so 滑湿 is something that has like a lubricating quality. So here's the thing: is when you have damp heat, even if it's just a little bit of heat, what starts to happen is everything has a clear and a turbid part. And when you heat up fluids, the clear part will evaporate, leaving thicker, stickier. And the more, the longer it's exposed and the more the heat, the more it'll evaporate off the qing clear part and leave the 浊, anyway, the turbid part. And then that can get sticky inside the waterways and make problems like this hard to resolve because it won't come out. So then the lubricating part helps to keep things like slippery, like talc, gymnasts and everything. So keep it slippery so things don't start clumping up and sticking in the tubes of your waterways. So there's a lot of good reason energetically why we like 滑湿. Just make sure when you get it that it's from a source where they've absolutely checked with zero tolerance for any asbestos, which pretty much that's the way it would be. I totally trust Springwind. I've taken it myself. Okay. Then next one is 竹叶. Okay, so we know that one. That's a special one that you remember, like it's sweet and bland and cold, and it goes to the heart and the small intestine and the stomach. So it actually has an effect in all three burners, right? How do we know it goes through the heart and is really important for that? Because it alleviates vexation of heat harassing the heart, right? So the emotional component that we experience, because that's my emotional experience of there's heat harassing my heart, okay? Then in the middle burner, a little bit with the stomach, and then very famous, not the bladder, which is the picture, but the small intestine, which is 太阳, right? So then we remember that's, that's for heart fire. That's in a formula like Daochisan, right? So like guide the red powder, okay? So because it eliminates vexation by promoting urination, moving the fire through the small intestine, the bladder, and out through urination. Okay, so that's chi layer. Like if you go back and you review some of the formulas from the worm disease school, and then you'll see that, when we study like initial stage, and then we'll see like, oh yeah, so look at this one. It's for initial stage, but it's already got 竹叶. Part of it is you're grouchy because you got this heat pathogen, and part of it is in their formulas, they work at multiple stages. So they were already working on the chi level to help promote clearing heat out of your body through urination. Okay. And then remember, the lungs on the bottom are connected to the waterways, which are connected to the bladder, and they're opposite sides of the organ clock. So there's a big relationship there too. All right. So we see the use of, from the Wenbing, we see use of 竹叶 in a lot of different formulas. Okay. So it's not strong make you pee. It does promote urination, but it's not like, oh my God, it's out of control. Okay. Then if we look at the last two, now this is an iconic pair, this last two herbs, right? Ban Sha Ho Po. So much so that there's a formula, classic formula called Ban Sha Ho Po Tang. Yeah. So this is a pair that on a different level is going to work on dampness. And generally speaking, we would use Ban Sha in a relatively high dose. And maybe, you know, when you look at ratios and everything. So Ban Sha, you can think of, you know, we do think of it as a little bit in the upper, but mostly Ban Sha is in the middle, right? So in the classic Shanhan Lun, then the number one herb, like the first move in your chess game against nausea for them would be Ban Sha. So it has strong downward movement, right? The name of the herb means half summer. So half summer means the summer solstice. So the left-hand side has come all the way up to the maximum. That's when it's harvested. And then there's nowhere to go but down. So Ban Sha is an amazing medicinal that works on your digestive system. It works on emotions. It's an amazing medicinal, very useful. And of course, it has a drying quality. So you have to make sure you use it properly, because if somebody's dry, you just make a thing worse. But in this case, a person's damp. And so you could think of it working together with the Baikogen to help dry the middle and move the crap out of the middle, right? So we're going to dump the stuff from the upper into the middle, use its physiology. Maybe we're overwhelming it. Now we're assisting it with its physiology and the drying quality, and drying the spleen functionally supplements the spleen. Right. So now the spleen's like, yeah. You know, everybody likes help. I mean, real help, right? Like you're, whatever. You're doing some chores or something. Somebody pitches in and helps clean the kitchen or something, and you like it. So Ban Sha is like somebody's emptying the dishwasher for the spleen or something like that. Yeah. So this doesn't supplement the spleen like you would say, oh, ginseng gives the spleen some qi, right? Not like that. It's by helping create the environment the spleen can thrive in and helping the stomach with downbearing the turbid. Fantastic. Ho Po, right? Ho Po, we think of works back in the upper, right? So it works in the upper. It opens up, diffuses the lungs, relaxes the diaphragm, and downbears. We saw it used a lot with purgation formulas, right? So it has a strong movement. But we should remember, and we saw it previous in dampness, right? So we should remember, what chapter do we learn about it in Bensky? Aromatic transform damp, right? Ho Po, also really great medicinal. And now you've got this thing of reinstating the qi dynamic of the lungs. Ho Po opens or diffuses the lungs. Xingzhen downbears. Ho Po then relaxes the diaphragm. So Ban Sha, Ho Po, and Xingzhen all are like really work very well together. Okay. Now, we all know that Ban Sha's best friend is Chen Pi, but, you know, sometimes it wants to go out and go to a sports bar with its other friends, Ho Po and Xingren, and then it's okay. It's okay. So, so you can think of that combination working in the upper, the Ho Po and the Xingren working in the upper, as we've seen in lots of other formulas, and moving things down, right? Like opening pathways is easier to move things down, and dumping its problems on the middle burner. Well, poor spleen. It's humble. It says, just help me and I'll take your burden. So we help it with Baikogen and Ban Sha. And then down in the lower, then we're helping to like, okay, you sent this stuff down, so let's get it out of here. And so it's a great combination. What a great formula, right? It's really, really impressive. In the writings where Wu Zhitong wrote this up, and he talks about the treatment, because he's Mr. Sanjiao, okay? So I don't know if this is in a Bensky book, but I wish it was. So Sanjiao, then what he says is that the upper burner must be like feathers. If it's not light, then there won't be any uplifting. The middle burner should be like a scale. If the treatment's not balanced, there'll be no peace. And the lower burner should be like a weight. If it's not heavy, there'll be no sinking. So simplify and take out some of the poetry. Upper burner, we use light things to get up there. Middle burner, always be balanced. Remember the spleen and the stomach, and then it's a pivot of up bearing and down bearing, and the spleen likes dry and warm, and the stomach likes, moist and whatever, right? So we always have to treat it like a balance, because if you try to go too much in one direction, you can mess up the other part, right? So we try to promote those things without overdoing it, right? So the middle burner, you treat like a scale, like a balance, okay? And then the lower burner, things have to sink, because the lower burner, we get rid of things by going down and out, okay? So upper burner, light chi, middle burner, balanced, right? Usually balanced with their activity and their temperature a lot of times, unless we need specifically clear heat or warm cold. And then the lower burner, heavier things for clear descent. Then the other part about it is that in the upper burner, basically we use descent. Yeah, descent, right? We're going to send it down to the middle. You don't really want to cough everything out, right? Do you want to cough everything out? No, you don't. So we sweep it down, right? That's su jiang. So we use descent. So we need something light that goes up there, and then it descends. Okay. The middle burner, we want to promote transformation, right? That's the word we see all throughout the Neijing and everything about the middle burner and the spleen, stomach, etc. It's transformation. And then the lower burner, in Nigel's terms, is percolating, right? Like Fuling percolates damp, seeps it down, and then exits from the body. So that's an awesome formula. And yeah, it bears some time talking about it, which we just did. So are there questions? Because probably someone needs a break right now.
Dr. Woodley,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I can ask this after break too. If it's better timing that way.
No way to know until I hear the question.
Okay, I have a couple.
Uh-oh.
First is you said something. You said when you were talking about 通草, you said something. I didn't quite. Can you elaborate a little bit? You said something like substitute 木通.
Yeah, so in ancient times, from Shahan Lun, what the scholars discovered is that somehow the names got crossed, and that when they would refer in the classic texts to 通草, what they were using was 木通, and vice versa. And so from that, one, people will change what we see written in the ancient text and change the herbs. And then two, then they are then understood to be freely interchangeable. They're not identical at all. Not identical at all. But a lot of times, like let's say that you don't have 通草, then what are you going to do, right? You can use 木通. Just better make sure that you have one of them in your clinic all the time.
Got it. Thank you. And then the other two are sort of a little bit off topic. So I was, when you're talking about the 白蔻人, I'm just wondering the cardamom we can get in grocery store, is that the seed, is that 白蔻人, or it has to be
yeah, the different kinds of cardamom all have similar but different functions. And so the cardamom that usually we see in a grocery store is the green pods around them, and that's a different one. So shazhen is a kind of cardamom. Baidoukou or baikoren is a kind of cardamom. There are a variety of different kinds of cardamom. So they're all similar but different.
Okay, great. I forgot the other question. Never mind. Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay, other questions?
Professor, I had to step out for a quick minute, so sorry if you already answered this. Does this slide have like your other slides have the signs.
Yeah. So no, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I just hacked this together 3 minutes before class started because when I went to find the slide, that's when I realized I hadn't made it yet. Shame. Yeah, and then I ran out of time, so no, it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Professor, I remember the other question now.
Okay.
Did I hear you say oatmeal is not good for people with dampness?
It's dampening grain. Yeah. It's
Oatmeal.
not as bad as corn or wheat, but it is more dampening.
Okay. Cloying.
Yeah. So it's okay to eat sometimes, but the other thing with porridge, when people are eating healthy, especially merkins, then a lot of times what they put with their nice hot whatever oatmeal, right? So then they got the oatmeal, and then they put raw fruit, brown sugar, and cold milk.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that tastes good, but that's you just made a dampening on top of dampening with more dampening.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because this is where TCM and modern nutrition is a little bit different in that they actually think oatmeal is very good if you have the roughage help with move things down, but right, because it has a lot of fiber and things like that. But
Oatmeal's great, and my ancestors ate oats a lot. So, but it's just that, like I had said, then a lot of times people, they want to eat more healthy, and then their interpretation. So a lot of what we do in clinic is try to help patients understand that, yeah, brown sugar is better than white sugar if it's real. I mean, a lot of brown sugar that you buy is just white sugar that they sprayed molasses on it, right? So like real brown sugar is absolutely more nutritious. Molasses is even better. But in our medicine, what we say is beware the sweet flavor. So going for so much sweet in and of itself is already not so good, right?
Got it. It's just like it has a property that modern science doesn't appreciate, that does not know about. It is nature. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So you'll meet a bunch of people with more modern nutritional, like biomedically based nutritional ideas. And some of them. So we judiciously try to help them understand Chinese medicine idea on diet. The big one is raw food. Just Saturday, then took a little while for somebody with the idea of bioavailability, and that it doesn't matter what's in something chemically analyzed when it's raw. That doesn't mean your body can absorb it. And actually the raw food, probably, especially for people that are weak, that's not good for you. And then, I know from my own experience when I was young, I ate a lot of raw food for exactly that reason. So, yep, we always run into those ideas. So, if you get really good at helping people understand and change their diet, let me know, because I want to sit in your clinic and listen to you, because it's really hard. So, anybody, I will pay you money if you say, yeah, I do this, I talk to them and they change their diet. It's amazing. I'm sitting in your clinic. I'll pay you, whoever it is, anybody. It's really hard to get people to change their diet. And the way that I learned to say it in my own dark humor way is, if I wanted to eat like that, Uncle Steve, I already would. But your diet sucks, right? Because what I promote is qing dan. Nobody likes it.
Yep.
Because it's qing and it's done. So, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
It takes a village to change the diet. Maybe, generation of acupuncturists.
Yeah. The influence that we can have on people, and then, yep.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions, or ready for a break?
Sorry, I have a question about this formula versus the usage, the signs and symptoms for this formula versus 藿香正气散.
Versus what? I can't hear you. I'm very sorry.
Versus 藿香蒸汽伞.
Mm.
It seems like there are some similarities, but would you say that it depends on the chief complaint that patient comes in with? With 半夏, maybe it's more for stomach pain, and for I don't know. I'm trying to differentiate when to prescribe this and versus 藿香蒸汽伞.
Okay. So here we go with that one. Sorry. So you will see some of the same. We got the 半夏厚朴, right, which is predominant in this one. Okay. And then when we look at it, yeah, they both have a huge damp component to them. The main manifestation for 藿香蒸汽伞 is the digestive eruptions, right? You see all this stuff over here. I don't know what comes through, but yeah, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Okay, when it gets to that point, that's where we need this formula.
Oh, okay. I get it now. Because
Yeah.
you mentioned that this 三人汤 is for early onset of this.
Yeah, and it's
damp
not so
alright.
much the gastrointestinal, right? Like
Right,
this
right.
person, the reason they come to your clinic is they've got this abdominal pain and they want to throw up, or they do throw up, and they have diarrhea and this and that, and that would not point me to think about 三人汤.
Okay.
But you're right, yeah, because the damp, and this is the thing about differentiating in clinic is, yeah, and then, if they don't take their formula, we didn't get it to them early enough, whatever, then they might one day look like 三人汤, and then maybe when they get to your clinic 2 days later, that opportunity is already gone. That ship has sailed. Right? And then maybe they've already got like, oh, the pain and diarrhea, and then we should be thinking about this formula.
And would you say the etiology also, the cause, for example, like for 藿香, maybe it's more caused by diet, and 三人汤 is more about environment? Would you say that?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
No. So this one is mostly considered to be like wind cold damp invasion, or wind cold invading on somebody with a damp. Right. So this could be, the damp could be internal or external. And in my own use, right, the original was like an external invasion for 三人汤, but in my own use, I'd say probably, because we live in a dry area, probably mostly it's internally engendered damp.
I see. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Keep them rolling. Every day is a pop quiz for Uncle Steve. Actually, endless. That's what your clinic is like. Endless pop quizzes. So, any other questions, or we take a break?
I have a quick question. It's not really about formula, it's more about like dampness. If you move environments and then you accumulate damp, but then you move to a more dry environment, and then you have something like multiple patterns going on, how do you determine how to get rid of dampness? If it's like your diet didn't change, but your environment changed, and then you accumulate like a lot of dampness.
That's
the diet environment.
Yeah, so that's a complex question. It was a good one. So the simple answer is going to be, one, how do I determine preponderance and severity of signs and symptoms? That's first and foremost. Second, location, location, location. What can happen is somebody, when you have damp, where's the damp? Then you move and it's dry. And like you're saying, well, I'm not exercising and I really eat the same crap I always ate. but I live in a drier environment. So just the interaction with the drier environment, some of the damp, you know, and you probably feel better, right? You just kind of, some of my, like for me with dampness, when the rain leaves and it's really clear after the rain front, I feel really uplifted, right? So the person might have some benefit, and that's maybe why they moved here, is like, oh man, I feel a lot better here. But other parts are not going to very readily just, you know, clear up because I'm breathing drier air. And then actually you can get kind of a, something can thicken and seal off and actually trap dampness in some area, and it's not going to resolve by living in a dry area, and actually in a way might be exacerbated. And so that's like, where is it? And then signs and symptoms, and then what do I got to do to free it up, access it, and help your body to metabolize it and get rid of it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else? Okay, break's over. Psych. Okay, like let's say 10:25. Would that work? Everybody get up, stretch, drink water, whatever. Is that okay? Hey, that's what I'm going to say because nobody's responding. Maybe everyone's already been on break.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see you at 10:25.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And we're back. Oh boy. Okay, so then the curriculum wants us to spend some time and talk about yin chen hao. So we're gonna, but not a lot. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this. It's a good formula. It's very good to know about it. One thing that's very good to know about it, if I said yang jaundice, what am I saying? Silence. Probably should have asked, are you guys back from your break?
Damp heat.
Yeah. Versus yin jaundice, which is
Damp cold.
yeah, cold, damp, cold. Yeah, exactly. When I say yang jaundice, which is damp heat, what organ network system first comes to mind, or systems?
Liver.
And
Gallbladder.
yeah, liver, gallbladder, right? So that's damp heat, liver, gallbladder. That's zangfu, that's modern. And then the yin jaundice, cold, damp, what organ network?
Digestive.
Yeah. Spleen, stomach, right? Yeah, it's pretty standard fare. So one thing that we can learn about, and we all know, thanks to this formula and thousands of years of clinical validation, then we know about yin chen hao. It's good medicinal, right? I wouldn't put it in the top 50 you need to buy when you open your clinic kind of thing. I would not do that. But yeah, I would say that it's one that you want to have once you build your herb pharmacy, right? And what we learned from this formula, this comes from Shahan Lun. It's a very small formula. And this formula and the mechanism behind yang jaundice in Shahan Lun is not liver gallbladder at all. Of course, liver gallbladder are not necessarily together in Shahan Lun. They're biaoli, right? So then, but that would be liver is jue yin paired with pericardium, and gallbladder is paired with sanjiao, and we call it shaoyang, right? So it's very different. And then damp heat jaundice, yang jaundice is yang ming, and more consistent with what we think of yin jaundice is tai yin, which those are biaoli, right? Yang ming is exterior to tai yin's interior. So what this should not do is say, oh my God, now what am I? Don't understand anything because one book said it was liver gallbladder. Now this is saying something else. Wrong. What do you understand it? Liver gallbladder. That's fine. And you bring that to your clinic and you know, you kind of understand and you treating and you're getting results. Great. However, there are going to be times when you run into a situation and then you're kind of stuck facing, hey, you know, I can't unravel this. It's not responding the way I want it to. And then you need other theories. You need other kind of systems so you can look at it with different eyes. And so this, if nothing else, it doesn't confuse me, doesn't contradict what I learned from whatever book or class. It's another facet on the jewel. So when everything's working out with liver, gallbladder, damp heat, right? And, you know, I treat it and I get the results, fine. And then when I run into something and I'm struggling to explain it and get the results, I need to have another way to look at it. And this gives me another way. And I'm just saying this about this particular thing, but this is always true. I don't want to get thrown for a loop because not every book says the same thing. And then all I got to do is remember one thing and they all say the same thing. Good luck. That's not Chinese medicine. There's lots of ways to look at it and the different things work. Okay, so what I want to do is have a knowledge base and understand that there are different angles to come at, and that's my friend, not my enemy. Okay, so yeah, it'd be nice. All I got to do is remember 5 facts and I can cure every human being's suffering, but that's not going to happen. So when I'm breaking it down, I go with what I know. And when that does not pan out, because I go with it because it pans out most of the time. And I give helpful treatments to people most of the time based on that. Why would I do other things? Well, because when I verify my diagnosis and say, well, this is damp heat, jaundice, what the heck? And then okay, I need a different way to look at it. Okay, so celebrate with joy. Celebrate with joy. So how do we get to this damp heat, right? So you could think of spleen damp, and this is kind of goes back to Huoshang Zhengxi-san. Could be wind cold damp invasion, could be wind cold damp invading on a damp person, or wind cold damp invasion, pause, breathe, wind cold invading a damp person. I don't even know what I said before. So, okay. So this could be like a damp heat invasion kind of problem, or it could be a heat issue like Yangming heat manifestation on a damp person. And it's really important that we try to learn. I don't care what I do care, but I don't care what the book and how the original author came to it. Is it legit that, like with this wind cold damp invasion or damp heat or whatever, that the damp was already there? Because then, boy, oh boy, you can start to see where the possibilities of application opens up. Okay, so here we go. Let's say that you've got, we're used to calling it spleen damp. And then, so a spleen damp patient, and they get some condition for a variety of reasons why Yangming would become too hot. So the idea is that the color of heat is red. What's the color of damp? Yellow, right? Remember your basic diagnosis, the 5 colors in the complexion. So yellow means damp. Yellow means damp. Okay, and why could I have damp? Well, because you have damp, or your spleen is vacuous and weak and fails to move and transform fluids, right? So damp. So then I got yellow, I got red, mix them together, damp heat, orange. And that's why you see orange in a lot of books. Okay, so makes total sense, right? What else am I going to see here? So, things that I'm going to look for are going to be urinary difficulty, and that can mean a lot of different things. Okay, that can mean a lot of different things. So inhibited urination, whatever. So I'm going to inquire about urination, and what's the right way to have urination? Well, 6 or 7 times a day, somewhere around there. If it's 8, whatever, right? 6 or 7 times a day. And then when I need to urinate, I don't have urgency that makes me run. I just go and I relax, I breathe, I relax, and my bladder empties itself fully, and I go about my day, right? 6 or 7 times a day, none at night. That's the ideal, right? So you inquire about urination. And so other things would indicate urinary problems. It's just that simple. So urinary difficulty, maybe some abdominal distension, whatever. Then the thirst, when you have damp heat, you might be thirsty from the heat, but then the dampness makes it feel uncomfortable to consume fluids. Okay, so maybe they only drink in small sips. And then we got damp heat. So is it damp predominant, heat predominant, damp and heat equal? Maybe they sweat a little bit. Maybe they don't sweat at all. Maybe they sweat only from their head. Why would they sweat only from their head? Why would they sweat only from their head? Nobody's saying anything. I guess it's on me to explain it.
Because of channel pathway?
What's that?
Because of the channel pathway going up out the head?
Ooh, yeah, I like that. All the yang channels connected to the head. Yeah, but why not sweat, from the upper burner or whatever?
Because there's a blockage there, and the only way it can release is in the head. Maybe, I don't know.
When you say a blockage, what do you mean?
Like the dampness is heavy, so it can't flow out of maybe I don't know how to explain it, but that's just
But
what I
that's
think.
pretty fantastic, right? Like that, right? So they have damp heat. So they have damp. Damp is a yin turbid evil. It can and will obstruct the chi dynamic. Imagine, if you will, that the damp is, accumulated wherever, right? And then remember the 4 movements of chi: up and out, down and in, right? So if it's up and out because of heat, and somebody was saying, well, yang channels, so heat goes up, yang channels go to your head. So duh, perfect piece of the puzzle, right? And then let's say that there's some kind of dampness obstructing the return down and in. And then as it accumulates up and out of your body, your upper outer part of the body, like your head, then it's like, I can't just keep building up here. So there's this relentless upward movement of heat, but the yang qi can't return to the interior very well. So then that's why they sweat from their head. And it is a sign of the damp is blocking. So, these are things that we always want to know, like, are you sweaty? And then where do you sweat? And usually you sweat from the level of your heart above the most, right? And sweat is the fluid of the heart. And so it makes sense. Your armpits, your chest, neck, head, right? Does that make sense? So these are kind of things that, then part of our diagnostic inquiry. Okay, it's not just, okay, so I sweat a lot. And you're like, okay, write it down and move on. When you sweat, do you sweat all over? Maybe they have sweaty feet and hands. See what I'm saying? Okay, so anyway, we got this. And the main thing, of course, is yang jaundice. And then simple 3 herb formula. And we all know yin chen hao. I tried to say it, but I don't know. That's like so yin chen. It's the core herb for the treatment of jaundice, right? And this has been validated through modern research, et cetera, et cetera. We would say like clear heat, percolate, damp. Clear heat, percolate, damp. Okay. And it's a specialty herb. We don't really use it for a whole lot of stuff, most of us, right? Most of us. We just use it to clear heat, disinhibit damp, and recede jaundice, right? So in TCM, that would say that it has some effect with the gallbladder because the yellow color comes from orange, comes from bile, which is associated with the gallbladder, right? So, and then it's kind of interesting to see the 栀子 and 大黄. 栀子is red color. It's red and it clears heat in the upper burner. We know because it helps to relieve vexation. And then also it doesn't strongly, but it helps open an exit through urination. It's not like a lot of other herbs that really make you pee. It's not like that. But it does open an exit, right, to help clear heat. So it's famous for fanzao, right? You have vacuity vexation, so like 酸枣仁汤, right? And then you have excess vexation, and at least in the classic, this would be a way to understand that. So 栀子, and then 大黄. Well, we just saw a whole chapter about 大黄, so we know it, but we could say that it descends yang ming, right? Stomach and intestines. It's purgative, yang ming. It has yellow color. So we have red and yellow make orange. And then we got a red herb and a yellow herb. Nice. So da huang we're using to open and exit in the rear, descend yang ming. And by descending yang ming, if we just talked about it, actually, how opportune, right? So we were saying, oh, here's this formula. We've got some stuff up in the lungs. So sujang, sweep down. Where? To the stomach, and then the stomach down to the large intestine. And then the large intestine, I think we know where that goes, right? So you could think of da huang working on stomach and intestines to open and exit, clear heat through defecation. And then that helps to, one is a yang ming problem, but then also you can think of like metal. It helps to cool metal, right? Yeah. So, we use Da Huang, clear heat, clear all kinds of pathogens, emptying out the colon. Okay. So then we could look at them as pairs. So, 栀子 and Da Huang we just kind of talked about, but then Yin Chen and 栀子 work together to clear heat and leach out stagnating damp heat. Okay. Clear heat and leach out stagnating damp heat. And then when we talk about Yinchen and Da Huang, this is purging. And so they're working together to purge out stagnating damp heat, right? So this is a simple 3-herb formula that will work on damp heat. Yinchen is particularly, it's a specialty herb for yellowing, jaundicing, right? Okay, I think that's kind of what I want to say about that, because I had to talk a long time about the formula I'm so in love with, and we're going to talk a bit of time about this one. This is one that's it's a very good, very important formula. Very good and very important formula. It is used from a lot of knee-jerk reaction, so that's really unfortunate. So a lot of times when people come and they tell their practitioner that, why are you here? Because I have frequent, urgent, burning, painful urination. Of course, nobody ever says it that way, but let's just make it quick, right? Frequent, urgent, burning, painful urination. And they immediately give them this formula. And the problem, and this is where confirmation bias comes from. The problem is that you'll be right many times. Just like if you tell an MD and then they're busy and then they give you some kind of antibiotics because most likely it's E. coli, right? And then, if this doesn't clear it up, come back and we'll do something else, or we'll give you another round or whatever. And because it's an assumption that statistically speaking is more likely that's what it is, and they're busy, right? They got 6 minutes to see somebody. So here, this is the most likely thing, take it. And that's what a lot of people do in their clinic. But what do you do, for the people where it isn't that? It isn't UB damp heat. So, it could be heart fire. It could be other things. And you just kind of throwing this out there, treating the disease, not the person. Shame on you. Shame. So, yeah. It doesn't take that long to do differential diagnosis, because maybe they need, as I mentioned earlier, Daochasan, so then guide the red powder. Maybe it's heart fire. Doesn't take that long to do differential diagnosis. Anyway, let's just assume that it is this, because we've got the signs and symptoms. So we've got frequent, urgent, burning, painful, difficult or inhibited urination, because dampness is a yin turbid evil. It can and will obstruct the qi dynamic, inhibiting the emptying of your bladder. Okay, right? And, dry mouth and throat, et cetera, et cetera. And we could look, maybe they got a little bit of jaundicing going on, et cetera, damp heat. So this is not the definitive, all-inclusive signs and symptoms, okay? When we talk about difficulty in urination, dysuria, then we could have that, painful urination. They can have incomplete urination. They can't fully empty their bladder, is real common. Urgency, dark yellow. Sometimes you'll see about reddish urine. Okay, yeah. Also look for turbidity. Okay, so cloudy, that's dampness. Foam, that's dampness, right? So heart fire doesn't have urine that foams up a lot. It burns, but it's not going to foam up a lot. It's not going to be cloudy or something like that. So if you get the cloudy, you're probably not going to see their urine, but you can ask them, and hopefully they can give you clear feedback. First and foremost is lots of foam, and foam that stays there, right? Like you see these things about water pollution, and you can see some effluent, and then there's a big mound of foam floating on the water, and it's not disappearing, right? So then when somebody urinates and this foam is, that's dampness. That's dampness. And the more that there is and the longer it lasts, that's the worse the dampness is. And then cloudy, also sediment, that kind of stuff. Okay. Yeah. And then again, with dampness, look at the tongue. Look at the tongue. Greasy, disgusting tongue coat. Yeah, but they'll probably say slippery, rapid pulse. Maybe could be wiry and rapid because dampness and the struggle and how much pain, etc. Okay, now here's the formula, and it's a really good formula. And depending on what practice you have, I would say you'll run into urination problems. but we treat the pattern. So what I hear people say, this is for UTI, I will scold you. I will scold you, and you will have resentment. And you'll say, someday I'll get you back when you least expect it, Uncle Steve. You're not looking. You're at the farmer's market and I'm going to sneak up. Anyway, so, but saying UTI is wrong for you to do. I treat based on a pattern. They might have these same manifestations with interstitial cystitis, which means that their urine is still sterile. What are you going to do? There's all kinds of urinary problems. I don't treat the disease. I treat the person. And if they have the manifestation, I give the treatment for the manifestation. And lo and behold, I've seen lots of people with all kinds of urination problems that it cleared up. So this isn't an antibiotic formula. It's not for UTI. It's for this kind that we would call linjiang, right? The urinary difficulty. I don't know how they translate into English. So that's or dysuria or yeah, there's so many different things. Okay, so you're treating the person, not the disease. So it includes, but it's not limited to certain kinds of UTI. Okay, but it's all about the presentation. All right, and then look at the formula. OMG, here we go. 母通滑石. Where have I ever seen that before? Well, probably for you in your own living room, not 1 hour ago. So then here we have the ability or the idea that interchangeable 母通 and 通草, right? Because of the 通, and they're related. They are not identical. They're not, I don't believe any herb substitutes really for any other herb. They all have their own character, right? Even identical twins don't have the same exact personality. You can't just plug one of them in and then they're the same. They don't have the same education. Oh, so-and-so can't come to work, but their identical twin will be here. So don't worry, they'll get all the work done. But I don't think so. Makes sense? So, but they are interchangeable enough, not the twins. Now I'm back to the herbs. They're interchangeable enough that if I wanted one, but I only had the other, I won't like sweat it. I just make the substitution, right? So here we have 母通滑石. So we just talked about, right? And the thing is, now here's this, but why I spent more time with it before. This idea of lubricating, right? So now you got damp heat, if we're properly diagnosing, they got damp heat. And then the damp heat becomes thick and sticky and gluey. And this is part of the reason damp heat is so hard to really resolve. 80-20 rule. 80% of it, pretty easy to get rid of it. It's the other 20%. It's hard. So this slippery stuff, right? 滑石 means like slippery stone. So the slippery stuff, lubricating, make it slippery. So instead of sticking into the waterways, it slides out. And we get the evil out of the body, okay? So this is a really good pair. And then again, 通草 or 木通. 木通 can descend heat from the upper burner, right? Because remember, it also has a connection to lactation, right? So that means it has some function in the upper burner. So it can help to descend from the upper burner and eliminate it through the waterways and out through urination. It's good medicinal. It's useful medicinal. 滑石 then is heavy. Remember, it's a rock, so it's heavy. Pushes pathological fluids down and expel through urination. Then we've got the three, and the next three. I don't know if it's that order in your Bensky book, but we want to look at this trifecta. And if you go back to your single herb book with these three, you will probably see some mention of damp predominate over heat, damp and heat equal, heat predominate over damp. And then they're all three here, kind of a shotgun, right? So what I would tell you is go back. It'll only take you 10 minutes. Go back to your single herb book, look these three herbs up, and then just quickly, sped read. And then just zip through it like, yeah, and pick up a few key things because this is very useful. And urinary bladder damp heat is not uncommon. Double negative. Good job. So we've got these three. So they all clear heat through urination, right? Promote urination. And then they work to support the ruling pair of the Huashi and the Mutong. So the main focus on this is diuresis, promoting urination to get rid of stagnating dampness with the heat. Okay, but the Huashi is like really important. Mutong, also important, but Huashi, really important. Slippery stone, right? And make it all slippery. Why gymnasts, why weightlifters use talc, right? Okay, so that's important. And then, oh, this is another reason why we study formulas, because we just went over this pair. And if I hadn't studied the previous formula, this pair would be like, what? Why are you calling it a pair? Well, now you know why. Now you know why. As a matter of fact, maybe I look at this formula and I say, okay, this formula is just a modification of yin chen hao tang, right? Yin chen hao tang. Except instead of yin chen, I just have all these other herbs. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But so this is why we study and we learn about who works well together, how do they work, when would I use them, and then now the producers of this formula, with their knowledge of Shahanlun formula, said, okay, let's like put this stuff all in. Okay, so zhizi is clearing heat from the upper burner. Da huang. Now, you know, if we're grinding it into a powder, so we're kind of not using da huang for major purgation. I'm not trying to poop your UV damp heat out, just opening exits to get damp heat evil out of the body. Right? So I'm not using it as a purgative like we did in the first chapter. We were looking at purgatives. Okay. So Da Huang, zhizi, help promote the elimination of heat, mostly, not really damp heat, but heat through the front and back orifices. Chichen, chumai, bianshu. These are clearing heat and damp heat from the lower burner. Okay. So, and then Chikansal, so, you know, these herbs together kind of getting a little bit fierce. So then you could think of gansal, moderate things, right? So kind of buffer the fierceness of the other herbs, right? Because these things are cold, and when you start giving cold stuff, you want to at least give something back to earth, right? Give something back to earth. Yeah, I guess that's what I want to say about that formula. And then to get back on track, we're going to take a break, but I want to make a mention of, no, wrong direction. Wrong direction. We're moving in the wrong direction. And now we've reached our destination. I would like to bring your attention to a series of very small formulas that are actually pretty awesome. And they are useful, right? This is one of these, or 3 of these formulas that you really want to know and have a relationship with. Okay, so this one, the name means like 2 marvels powder. And then when we add an herb, 2 + 1 is 3. So then it's called 3 marvels powder. Add 1 to that, that equals 4. And then so the other one's called 4 marvels powder. And it's another reason why we want to study formulas, because they help us learn about things that, you know what, if it weren't for this, I wouldn't have known to put these things together. So this first pair, Huang Bai and Cang Zhu, this pair is for treating damp heat. And then damp heat, you can see it can be a lot of different things, but one is that it can be affecting joints and tendons, right? Joints and tendons. And then damp heat pouring down, maybe you can't see enough. How's that better? Damp heat pouring down can go past the bladder, sink down into your legs, affect your knees, can affect your feet. And so then, you know, most of us have talked about a bit about B, right? Impediment syndrome. And then in the yin yang, there's I think it's it's like wilting syndrome. So you can have this damp heat wilting syndrome, atrophy syndrome in your feet. And that can also be from, the damp heat, and then we would use this approach to address it. Okay, so could be, joint pain affecting your sinews. So then the heat kind of makes them slack, and then people can have all kinds of problems with, recurrent joint pain. And maybe it's triggered by weather, right? What kind of weather? Well, hot, humid weather, right? It can be triggered by dietary stuff that aggravates damp heat. And they just know that they've got this pain problem, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Also can be part of an approach to the 代谢病, right? So abnormal vaginal discharge, 代谢病. So that's like below the belt disease. When you learn in your TCM gynecology, then 代谢病, 代谢 there's 5 colors and 5 colored. And in your practice, you'll probably deal with yellow, which is damp heat, and white, which is cold damp. And we were just talking about jaundice. So this is also another thing. Usually the yellow 代谢 is associated with liver gallbladder, because the liver channel encircles the genitals, and the gallbladder channel also comes there to meet up the liver channel in this pelvic area. And, I think some sources say the gallbladder channel goes to the superior border of the pubic hair. That's so different on a lot of people. I don't know what to, I don't know. So, yeah, yellow 代谢 is quite often put as liver gallbladder damp heat, and then white is considered to be spleen vacuity with cold damp, or cold damp invading the spleen. Different ways people say it. Okay, so if you diagnose liver gallbladder damp heat, then 龙胆泻肝汤, right, which is a really big formula and pretty harsh for someone's spleen. So this one also, and maybe 2, 3, or 4, you might give to somebody with some yellow 代谢, damp heat, abnormal vaginal discharge. Okay, so you see the variability, because we're treating the damp heat problem. Where is it? Well, it could be in the legs, could be in the feet, could be in the joints and bothering the sinews. And then we see that it could be leading to abnormal discharge. Maybe they have all of it, right? Maybe they show up some stuff that's erupting on their skin, right? Damp heat. How do I know it's damp heat? Well, it's red, that's heat, and it's got, say, vesicles, or it's weeping, right? So you got a weeping red thing on someone's skin. What is behind that problem? Damp heat. You still have to figure out where the heat is, et cetera. But you see how broadly applicable this is. I mean, these things are really different from each other, right? Right, Uncle Steve? Thank you. Thank you very much. So when somebody, how do I want to say this? I've said this before. So when people are unsure in clinic, what do I see them do over and over again? What did I say? I think I told you guys about this last week, and probably every week. So people are unsure. What do they do in clinic?
Small dosage first.
Well, that would be prudent, but what do most real people do? They're unsure.
They ask a question.
I didn't understand. It's like are you driving around in your car?
I'm driving right now, yeah. I said
That's
they ask,
awesome. No, that's the
they
21st century right there, right? I mean, like, we're having a classroom, and that's cool. You could be out hiking if you got reception. Fine by me. I'm jealous. So don't tell me, yeah, I'm in the redwoods right now. You should be here. Yeah. Okay. So what people do is they start throwing more herbs into the formula. Well, maybe this will help. Oh, this is for this, relief of the symptom or whatever. And then their formula gets bigger, 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 bigger. And that is exactly the wrong thing to do. You can understand the mindset, right? I don't have confidence. I'm not sure. So I'm adding this and this and this, and then I'm adding that and whatever. And then you've got these monstrosities, 20, 25 herbs. And I'm not saying that no formula ever should have 20 herbs in it, but shouldn't arrive there with this thinking. This thinking is I'm lost and I'm desperately throwing stuff into the herb formula, hoping something will stick. Wrong. I mean, if you're that bad, you should refer them to someone else, honestly. Like if you're just that clueless about what to do to help a person, and everybody's been there. Everybody has been there. So if you just really like, I just don't know, and you're going to give them 25 herbs because you just don't know, you doubly don't know, because what you should do is being taught to you here and often many places. Give them a small formula. Really small. This has really broad application. Do I have the perfect 100%? Here you go. No, I don't. But also, sometimes the damp heat is widely spread. They got joint problems. They got abnormal vaginal discharge. They got skin eruption. Where is it? It's all over the place. So this formula, or these 3 formulas, have really broad application. They're useful. And then sometimes, you know, what do I know? Well, all I really know is they have damp heat. Well, that's a good thing to know. What else do you know? Well, I know that they're showing it in their knees. They have abnormal discharge, and they have this rash on their arm. Yeah, so it's all over the place, right? It's all over the place. So then instead of giving them 25 herbs, give them 2, 3, or 4 herbs maybe. It is a little weird because a lot of times it's like acupuncture, right? The greatest acupuncturist maybe can cure you with 1 needle. And then being in a profession, we'd be like, oh my God, 1 needle? Wow. But patients would get pissed off, right? Because they saw those TV shows where somebody has 37 needles and doggone it, I want my needles, right? And then a lot of times they want more herbs. What do you mean? This is my formula. There's like 4 herbs in here. Come on. I've got some complicated stuff going on here. Yep, you do. So then the other thing you have to learn is like how to try to explain to them that, you know, that this small formula is broadly applicable. And because, you know, so maybe you can do it from this. Okay, well, you got problems in your knees, so that's your joints and your sinews. You've got this problem here, and then you've got this rash on your arm. And for us, they're all connected, even though they're far apart from each other. And so what this formula does is deal with the root cause, not like targeting specifically, right? But if I give you add on things for your rash, and then add on things for the discharge, and then add on things for joint pain, and you got this huge formula, now you got to digest all that crap. No, this is better. Some people will fall for it. Go ahead and try. And when you learn how to say that better, that's another time I'll come and I'll pay you, and I'll sit in your clinic and listen to you like, wow, awesome. So we look at the basic formula, Armiao, 2 marvels. The first marvel is I never would have thought to put these 2 herbs together. Just be honest, right? Huang Bai. Then we learn about the 3 yellows, right? Huang Qin, Huang Lian, Huang Bai, or Huang Bo, as I'm told is actually the right way. Bitter, cold, right? Clear heat, dry, damp, drain, fire, resolve toxins. Let's give them all 3. That's a formula, right? That's a formula. So that's kind of how we might think. But here, somebody who knows better than us didn't just use bitter, cold. They used acrid, bitter, and warm. And it's drying, right? So Cangzhu, we talked a little bit about it, right? So Cangzhu is like more drying than its cousin Baizhu, right? It's more drying, not supplementing nearly as much, but it'll supplement by giving the spleen some dryness. It resolves the exterior instead of secures the exterior. So it has a focus in the middle, but then it also reaches out all the way to the skin, right? So it reaches from the surface and the articulations, like skin problem and joint pains, you mean? Yeah. But then also in the middle, transform damp, which then helps the spleen, and that's the herb we need. We need the spleen to get in there and get in a race, right? Like we need you to help out. It's too damp in here. Okay, here, we'll dry you out, and then you got to come in and help. You got to resolve this damp. Okay. I don't fix you, you fix you. So I can help your spleen, then your spleen fixes you. Okay. So, Tangzhu, very useful medicinal. Oh man, use it a lot. Huangbai or Huangbo is for damp heat, right? We know that it's clear heat, dry, damp, drain fire, resolve toxins, clears vacuity heat in the lower burner. It's pretty special medicinal. And then because of lower, right? Why don't we use Huangqin? Well, we say that's, it's all 3 burners, but we say its focus is in the upper. This one, the focus is in the lower, and damp percolates down, so it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, this is one of those yellow damp heat herb. Emphasis on damp. It still clears heat. Emphasis is on damp. Okay. Yeah. So then Samyao. What do we add? Shi. I can't pronounce these things. That's hard for me always as a second tone. Shi. Anyway, what's special about that? What kind of herb is it and what's special about it? Nothing. There's nothing special. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Moves blood. And then what's special about it as a blood mover? Moves blood down. Moves blood down. It's very useful for like female reproductive disorders a lot of times, and we need to, and guide, we need blood moving. So a lot of times this wants to be in there. Now, supplement, right? There's 2 versions, right? There's one from Sichuan province. So it starts with Chuan. So the herbs that start with Chuan, river, Chuan. It's not because they're from a river. They're from 4 rivers, Sichuan, right? And then Huai is a river. So Huai Niuxi is more supplementing. Chuan Niuxi is more moving. What's my intention? Well, my intention is guided by the patient, right? So maybe sometimes when they say Niuxi, they just mean Chuan Niuxi, but maybe they just like, I make the decision in clinic based on what I think needs to be done. Okay. So this helps to guide down. And then remember, fluids and blood flow together, right? Fluids and blood flow together, and we're kind of activating, getting things moving, bringing stuff down to the lower burner. And then the 4 marvels, we have Yi Zhen. Well, we just talked about it, Sanzhen Tang. So Yi Zhen is really useful because we have a lot of people with damp problems. Okay, so when we use the 4 marvels, it's usually for the wilting syndrome, and maybe they have lots of numbness and weakness in the lower extremities. And then you look at their feet and they got like, pain in their feet and some puffy swelling. And then maybe we will come to the 4 marvels. But maybe it's just some stuff in the legs and abnormal discharge, or man with a weepy, itchy, red skin rash in the inguinal area. It doesn't have to be damp heat, abnormal vaginal discharge. It could be a skin rash in either of the 2 sexes. Okay, so yeah, it's damp would be vesicles or weepy rash, and then red heat, and there you go. So you really want to be aware of these. And then this also from our first formula, then Yi Zhen, a lot of people, to my surprise, they say like, oh, I never used that herb. I'm like, how can you say you never used that herb? Then I always wonder, like, am I convinced myself it's more important than it is? But I always come to this. No, you're wrong, not me. So anyway, I find it very useful in clinic. And yeah, very useful in clinic. We have a lot of people with damp problems, and it's food, right? So a lot of times there might be some really, really toxic herb. I don't really want to use those because, what meds are people on? So bring it with the food. Okay. Well, now I look at the time. So how about some questions? People are already leaving the meeting. I get the pop-up messages. I guess they're anticipating the break. So for a break, that's fine. Any questions? Okay, let's take a break and then let's say 11:20. And then we'll move through to our lunch break, okay?
Thank you.
No one can hear because I had my microphone off because I was goofing off. Everybody back? I guess
Yes.
everybody know that I'm back.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do a little bit more. So wind damp. A lot of what we can think of, there's a lot of different ways to look at wind damp. And then something you can do if you want to learn deeper, maybe we do it in Shahan Lun class or something, is the 19 lines of pathology. Maybe you did it in your Neijing. I would think and hope that Su 174, very famous 19 lines of pathology. And the damp line will tell us that, you know, like stiff and sore in the head and nape is ascribed to damp. Yeah, it's ascribed to damp. So that gives us another way of understanding when people have this kind of experience. And you might think wind cold exterior invasion, and then your treatment's not going the way that you would expect it to go if they have wind cold exterior invasion. So I need more tools in my toolkit. And then one is to understand the original 19 lines of pathology would ascribe that to damp. Does make a lot of sense, actually. So, yeah, recent person with coming down with the gamao, and then, you know, they have body aches or whatever, but then they have a lot of stiffness. So that would help me understand that their exterior invasion has a component of dampness. But we live in a dry area. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just treat what I see. Sometimes it's easy to come to an understanding of, well, you know, the reason this is happening is because of blah, 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 right? Like in the rainy season or something. But sometimes you just have to go with what's presented. And who knows what the person, like some piece of information that I'm not aware of, right? And then that's why they have damp. But, you know, if they're manifesting it, we treat it. We treat what we see. And from these, like, okay, so the B, maybe you're treating somebody with chronic pain. This is also really good to know. Really good to know. The stiffness part is damp, right? So damp, puffy swelling, easy, right? Stiff, and it's not, I don't have range of motion because it hurts so bad I can't move that far. That's sometimes an issue. Sometimes it's just plain stiff. Like when you wake up in the morning and you walk to the bathroom, try to bend over and touch your toes. This is assuming you can, right? Bend over and touch your toes. And then a lot of people can't do it in the morning until they get moving around, and then they can do it. And then you look at your face, and do you have puffy swelling, like, you know, puffy eyes and everything? Look at your tongue. Does your tongue look more puffy? You got damp. You got damp problems, probably weak spleen, right? So they got damp. And a big thing to think about is here we see difficulty in moving, stiffness, heavy sensations. These kind of things are pointing us at damp. If we just let us see it, there it is. Okay, so, and then we see, here's a formula addressed to treat it or designed to address it. And yeah, big dosages, right? So the first one to really take a look at would be Changhuo. This is a great medicinal. And I also like its buddy, Duhuo. The thing I don't like about Changhuo is it's expensive, right? It's like $60 a pound now. So it is very useful medicinal. But right now, and you know, we got when prices go up, there's my experience in many decades of life. They never go back down. Yeah, I don't, you know, gasoline gets more expensive. Sometimes it goes down because sometimes there's a price spike because of whatever. Yeah, but most things, housing, right? Houses just get more and more expensive. You don't see like there's a sale on and you can buy houses at half price or something or whatever. So that's just the way it is. So when it's expensive, I assume it's going to stay expensive. But I really recommend that from this, you kind of pick up, and then Uncle Steve keeps saying about how patients have a lot of issues with damp. And I'm sure as soon as you think about it, you go, well, that doesn't really surprise me that much, because I know someone who's addicted to cheese. And then I'd tell you just a quickie. Back in my youth, and then I hung out with various kinds of vegetarians. And then I learned that there are really smart vegetarians who have excellent diet. And then there's the majority of them who are what I learned to call stupid vegetarians. And they call themselves vegetarians just because they didn't eat meat, but they had a horrible diet, probably worse than a carnivore. And, one of them, a strong thing was the cheese people, right? Lacto-ovarian, vegetarian, whatever. We had all kinds of subcategories of veggies. I don't know if any of that exists anymore, but I saw a bunch of people, and I didn't know Chinese medicine back in the 80s, but I was into Tai Chi and learning some things about, and I got into macrobiotics, so this stuff, and then seeing cheese and how phlegmy these people were, how phlegmy they were, right? Because, so your patient population, a lot of people are just in love with cheese. I've had patients tell me, I can't live without cheese. And like, actually, scientific research proves you can. There's a lot of people that never eat cheese and they're still alive, right? So you can, unless you convince yourself you can't. So a lot of times we've got people with these damp problems, then they encounter some atmospheric change, right? And then location. When it's affecting like the sinews, maybe the sinew vessels or something like that, that's when we're going to start to see stiffness. Okay. If it's in my middle burner, I probably don't feel stiff unless I try and do sit-ups or something, right? If it's a lower burner, right? But when it's out in the extremities, when it's out in the periphery, that's when you experience dampness. Okay. And then like peeling an onion, here you are in a clinic and you're talking about all these musculoskeletal things. So we're going to address that. But I bet when we get off this layer, we're going to find stuff inside that's going to need continuing assistance to really resolve stuff, or it's just going to come back. Okay. So we got various ones that are showing wind, cold, and damp. And then, we learn about Changhuo. That was my first day of school. Had single herbs class. Dr. Lau, God bless his soul, just started teaching us herbs. Yeah, welcome. Here we go. And just started teaching Ma Huang, Gui Zhi, third herb, Changhuo. And then it's like, okay, so this is for wind, cold, damp, bee pain. And I'm like, what do you mean wind, cold, damp? And what the heck is bee pain? I'm like, oh man. Yeah. So we learn these things in the beginning and we don't even know what we're learning. So it's not in this one, it's in the next one, but Changhuo and Duhuo, these are often used as a pair, which we'll see in the next formula. Changhuo is, we learned it in acrid warm exterior resolvers. So what does that tell me? Okay. So generally, when we think of that, and our approach would be acrid warm exterior resolver versus like a wind damp herb from that chapter or aromatic transform damp or something, it's much more of an acute nature. And as an exterior resolver, we think of the upper and outer part, right? And then we free the surface. Okay? So promote sweat, right? And then promote sweat. But I've taken this many times and not one drop. So I feel cheated or something, or it means something else. Like, just like in the previous ones, we're opening urination, but we're not really, we did in a Bajingsan, right? But we're not often making you pee a lot. We're just opening an exit to get evil out of the body. We use Da Huang very differently in this chapter than we did in the first chapter we were studying, because we're just opening an exit so evil can be, we're not pumping things out of the body, right? So sometimes when we open the pores, we are pumping sweat out of the body. Ma Huang Tang. And then other times we're just opening, like if it's, you get home and somebody left stuff boiling and now it's all steamy inside, then what are you going to do? You're going to open the windows and let the air come through and move the dampness, the humidity out of the kitchen, out of your living room. Okay. So sometimes it says promote sweat, but they don't actually sweat. but we still can understand that we're opening the windows to vent things out. Okay. And then this is true also when you're using acupuncture. You learn certain points that, you know, they resonate with opening the pores or promoting urination. And you say, well, I needled myself and I didn't pee, right? But then just maybe even symbolically, we're opening exits to get evil out of the body. So we do it with acupuncture and we do it with herbs. And then sometimes when it says promote sweat, you're not really looking for them to need to towel off the sweat. Okay, so that's where we're at here. So Changhuo, I've never sweat, but I do believe that it frees the surface, right? Frees the surface, opens the pores, opens the windows. And that we use it for upper and outer and acute. And we'll talk more about Duhuo in the next formula. So Changhuo, very useful herb. I really like it. And then you can think a lot where somebody has this kind of dampness causing stiffness in the upper body, especially in the like the neck and you know, the neck and the shoulder. It's not really because of shoulder joint, you know, but anyway, like GB21, that kind of area. Okay, so that's really useful. Then we see the next herb is one that most people don't use very often. I use it some. I wouldn't say it's main one, but I think it's useful. And so I definitely always have it, but I'm not, you know, a week go by, I didn't use it with somebody. But this is a you know, quicken the blood, dispel stasis, and moves qi. And then it's in there because of spasms, but then also from when you study pain herbs, when you study them, a lot of times you'll see that they have like a tropism for a certain part of your body. We're going to see, more in the next formula. Chuanshong, right? Then we know that one's for headaches, for example. Okay, so Jiang Huang, then when you learn these things, you want to learn, and then maybe you go back for the pain relieving herbs and make like a drawing of the body and then start marking like, okay, what herbs are good for shoulder? What herbs are good for the neck? I don't know why that came up. So, right? Those kind of things. So then that kind of helps you, just like you learn acupuncture points. Oh, this is for relieving whatever problem, right? And then you want to know what channels go to the eye, what channels go to the ear. That's how the medicine works, right? So Jiang Huang is more, not so much for the dampness, but for the pain. And there it is again. I don't know how this program works. Okay, so I don't use it a lot, but I do use it, and you will probably want to use it along with other herbs for when they have shoulder pain. Okay. When we look at the next herbs, then Dangui, and then skip one, we have Bai Xiao, Dangui, Bai Xiao. So yeah, this is half of Siwu Tang. Half of Siwu Tang. And then wind, you know, to treat wind, first treat the blood. Dangui is acrid and warm and sweet. So acrid and warm helps to circulate the blood, and then the sweet actually helps promote the blood. So it nourishes blood and quickens the blood, dispels stasis. Bai Xiao nourishes the blood, relax the sinews, stop pain. When you look at Bai Xiao and you look at the last one, Chigan Cao, I think I mentioned this before, but this is a two-herb formula called Xiaoyao Gancao Tang that comes from Jingui Yao Li. And then this actually, you know, when you study single herbs and you study Bai Xiao, and then you learn that, you know, nourish the blood, astringe the blah, 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 relax the sinews, stop pain, right? And all of those statements come from the application in some formula. So Bai Xiao, and then so Xiaoyao Gancao Tang is incorporated in this, and it can be an effective formula for people because you have hypertonicity when the blood is not nourishing. And sometimes the blood's not nourishing because you don't have enough blood, right? You're blood deficient. You're not nourishing your sinews. Other times, and we usually call that liver blood deficiency, right? And then other times is you do have blood. Well, why aren't you nourishing the sinews then? Why are they stiff? Something's blocking it from getting there to nourish and relax the sinews. And that could be yin turbid evil, in this case, damp. And then if you remember the theory of 6 depressions, qi, blood, damp, phlegm, food, fire. So once you have, say, damp, that can lead to blood stasis and further obstruct, right? So you have these blood movers, jiang huang and dangui. So you have them helping to move the blood. You're resolving the damp, and now you're nourishing the blood so to relax the sinews, because you can get multiple reasons why everything's stiff and painful. Okay, then huang qi, then dangui. Huang qi is a 2-herb formula called dangui bu shui tang, like dangui supplement the blood decoction. And that's for deficient people who kind of have trouble healing. Now, that one is a huge dose of huang qi versus kind of standard dose of dangui. So the ratio is not represented here, but just kind of remember, since the time of the 4 great masters, dangui and huang qi are fantastic pair. Okay. And then we have fang feng. Fang feng is, means like protect from wind. So it's a great medicinal for wind, damp, bee pain, and help protect you from wind. So, this is an interesting formula. Has, they're supplementing and supporting, right? Blood movement. Uh-oh. Hold on. Okay. All right. Sorry. I forgot the office was forwarding to that. So, we have supplementing. We got quicken the blood, dispel stasis, boost the qi to boost the blood, nourish the blood, relax the sinews, stop pain. So we're transforming damp, moving blood, nourishing blood, boosting qi, relax, and stop pain. So it's a good formula to learn from. I don't know that I've ever actually used this formula in this form, but learn from it, and then you learn who goes well together. And then also, like I said, I don't know if you guys have a class where you're learning how to treat pain conditions with acupuncture and herbs, but you really want to spend time and then like mark down things like Sangzhi is for the arms, right? And then Jiang Huang is for the shoulder and that kind of stuff. So then you have these targeting herbs, right? So target an area of the body to help get better results. Okay. All right. And then I think this one, I don't know, maybe it used to be on and then they took it off. I don't know. This is also a good one to learn from. So this is kind of like Changhua, and then where, the shi is for damp. So, sorry, siren. So we look at this, and then there's a few formulas where we're combining Changhua and Duhua, right? So this is a great combination to be aware of. Duhua is for wind, cold, damp, and that usually we use it because the wind, cold, damp is making the joints ache. In acute cases, Changhua is preferred. In chronic cases, Duhua, and then a lot of times what comes to your clinic is actually somebody with a chronic problem with an acute flare-up. Use them both. Changhua is an acrid warm exterior resolver. Duhua is more like for wind damp chapter. So what we think of is that Changhua is for acute and upper outer. Duhua is for chronic lower inner. They're used as a pair. Then I can address chronic underlying condition with acute flare-up. And then also I've got upper outer, lower inner, so it's more widespread. Jiang Huang was like targeting, okay, it's my shoulder. Well, what about your low back? No, it's my shoulder. Okay, how about your hip? No. Okay, gotcha. So we use a targeting herb, but then the pairing of Changhua and Duhua is widespread, and then chronic with acute flare-up. Now, if you had formulas 1, you should be able to name to me a state board formula that also uses this, but you learned about it in formulas 1. Who remembers? So you had to have formulas, or you just happen to study the herb. Who remembers? And actually, it's the source of a trick question on licensing exam. Okay, who had formulas 1? Nobody? Seriously, nobody had formulas 1? Ah, okay. I thought the mic was broken or something.
Is it Renshin Baidu-san or Jingfang
Bingo,
Baidu-san?
right? So that's when I took the license exam, this was one of the questions, but it's always roundabout, blah, 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 blah. And then they're giving you a case study, because the one I took, it was all case studies. And then they want to know, what's the emperor herb of the formula that best addresses this person's problem? And then one of them is Renshin. And then a lot of people put that. That's not the emperor of the formula. Renshin Baidu-san, right? So Baidu is like kind of like resolve toxins. It's Baidu-san. And then there's like Jingfang Baidu-san, Yinchao Baidu-san, Renshin Baidu-san. So there's a whole bunch of them that are this version of the resolve toxin powder. The ruling pair of that formula is Changhuo, Duhuo. Yeah, that's the ruling pair of the real core formula. And then the Renshin is that's the version of it. So watch out when you take your license exam, if they give you this run around with and you're like, oh, I know what that formula is. It's Renshin Baidu-san. And then, if they ask you for the emperor, it's not Renshin. It is absolutely is not that. Okay. So watch out. And then you'll say, thank you, Uncle Steve, for about 3 seconds. And then you'll forget I even exist as you go back to getting your license. Okay. I just talked about Fang Feng, but I want to bring more attention right now because we only got a couple minutes. Chuan Song. So this herb is often forgotten, like half of what it's for. We remember that it moves the qi in the blood. And so when we study formula like Siwutang, it's an indispensable part of Siwutang. And it moves the qi in the blood. And then maybe you could say like it's coursing the liver qi. There's a lot we could say about it. What people really tend to forget is that this is the core herb for headache. So when we learn like Baizhi is for Yangming headache, and then you got Gaoben and Fangfeng, we got these Manjingzi, you got these headache herbs, and it's for this one. Remember targeting, right? So which one's for Yangming headache? Which one's for Jueyin headache? Which one's for this headache? Those functions are when they're paired with Chuan Song. Chuan Song is our like first move that we go for headache in general. And then we use those other herbs in pairing to kind of bring the message more to this part or that part. Okay, so Chuan Song, very important for headache. Okay, and then it stops pain, but it's also a wind herb. It's also a wind herb. And yeah, many of us forget that that the Chuan Song moves the qi in the blood, but then expels wind and stops pain. Okay, so you remember that it moves the qi in the blood. It's very famous. It's moves the qi in the blood. Therefore, that's how it moves the blood. And you might remember that it stops pain. You might remember that it's key for headaches. But most people forget that it actually expels wind. And because there's different ways that we understand wind. And each way and location, that's how we have to be guided on how to expel it. Okay, so today's corporate sponsor is Chuansong, maybe, because I really want you to go back and review that medicinal. And this is a medicinal really to, it says when treat wind, first treat the blood. When blood moves, wind spontaneously subsides. This herb is a manifestation of that principle. Manifestation of that principle. Okay, so yeah, maybe that's what I want to say about that. So then for the wind part, then of course you can see a lot of wind cold herbs, galben, fangfeng, right? So fangfeng means to protect from wind. So I guess the next one that I would say, definitely you want to really focus on using fangfeng is also not cheap anymore. And fangfeng, for some reason, those little black weevils or whatever that get in the herb sometime and eat your inventory, yeah, they seem to like expensive herbs, and I found that they really like fangfeng. So you have to really protect and keep on top of your inventory, because once you get any kind of outbreak, you just have to get rid of it before those bugs. I don't know how they get everywhere, but they get everywhere. So yeah, I hate them. You can tell because I've lost a lot of herbs to them over the years, and they only eat expensive herbs for some reason. So man, they have connoisseur taste. Okay, so this formula, then you can see a grouping and be reminded, and maybe you want to go back and review. Changhuo, Duhuo, those are really well worth reviewing and knowing. Galban is less used, right? Galban is, I don't know, when you're building your pharmacy, depends on your patient population, but I would bet that probably you have 150 herbs before you get Galban. But fangfeng, yeah, that's probably got to be in the top 100, depending on your patient population, maybe first 50. Changhuo, Duhuo, there's lots of dampness. So I really recommend that you get to know those. And even if you don't have the Gaoben or Manjingzi, the rest of them you should probably have in any herb pharmacy. And I think that if you open your mind, right, a lot of people have damp, and a lot of people, their body ache problems have no small component of dampness. And so you need to know how to get rid of the damp, and then, just supplementing a spleen, that ain't going to do it, right? Location, location, location. I think maybe one more. Maybe not. Oh, I know. How about this one? This one we just do really quickly. This is from the classic. And, this one, I just say, when you look at the description, then what you can often see is the swollen, painful joints. They can be red and warm to the touch. And it's often worse at night. I've seen it a lot in people's fingers. I've seen it in other joints. And the mistake that's easy to make is that you see the heat. You're right, but that's local heat. And then the person is almost always yang deficient. You look at this formula and you're like, yep. So another thing with this formula is you can see classic formulas, like there's Gui Zhi Xiao Yao, means Bai Xiao Yao, right? And then Sheng Zhang no Da Zao and Gan Cao or Zhi Gan Cao. So that's almost Gui Zhi Tang. And then you have Gui Zhi Ma Huang or Ma Huang Gui Zhi. You don't have Xing Ren because they don't have Chuan, or you might put Xing Ren as a modification, okay? And then Gan Cao, so you have kind of like Gui Zhi Tang, Ma Huang Tang. And then when you study Jinghui Yao Le, you'll study, if you had formulas one, you studied Ma Huang Tang, and it makes you sweat, right? And then when people have acute wind, cold, damp, acute, they like just got it because I was out in the rain or something, what you're supposed to give them is Ma Huang Tang and add Bai Zhu. Bai Zhu is the one that's in the jade windscreen powder to help secure the exterior. So you add Bai Zhu to Ma Huang Tang to slow the sweating process down. So because if I sweat too much, too fast, I lost my sweat, maybe I lost the thinnest part of the evil damp, but the thicker part stays behind, and now it's going to be a lot harder to resolve. So what you're supposed to do is give a really slow, even, almost just barely sweating, right? Not make them bust a sweat. Potentially something like, could be. So, we always frame the questions like that. I do too. So I'm not saying that, but what we have to think of is a lot of times when we learn these things, we say, "Oh, is that X disease?" And then the right way to look at it is that's a big umbrella that includes, but absolutely positively is not limited to this disease, right? Yeah. It's normal for us to think that way. So I'm not saying anything other than, yeah, I've done it 1,000 times. So in my learning process, then I want to share, we really want to think of Chinese medicine as being transcending categorizations of biomedicine. Yeah. So it includes, but is not limited to. And there was actually a student at your school about 12 years ago or something who had exactly this. She had like varying degrees of stiffness of her fingers. And then she got a flare up of, got really stiff and painful. And you could see like reddening over the big knuckles of her fingers. And you touch it and you could feel warmth. And then pretty much this formula with just a little bit of modification. And after a couple of weeks, she is not cured. There's no such thing. But she said, this is the best I've been in a long, long, long time. This is the best I've been in a long, long, long time. And what she had expected was a bad flare up that was going to last for who knows, month or months and get really bad. But instead it reversed. And then she felt more flexibility in her fingers. And then even though in Chinese medicine school, once she got to that point, she didn't want any more treatment. I'm like, but you have a long way to go. And then, nope, didn't want any more treatment until the next big flare up. And that's the way human beings are, right? That's the way they are. Okay, well, I actually have a clock in front of me now, so I'm trying to keep track of things a little bit better. So apparently your class is over. So next week, we're going to finish up the damp and then move into the next section, which I'm going to stall and then look it up. But we're the ones that promote urination, which have a lot of really important formulas in it, state board formulas and understanding it. And then to the degree that we move past that, we'll start warm the interior, or at least the preamble opening discussion of warm the interior depends on how far we get. And those actually transition from one to the next very well, right? And then there are a lot of classic formulas. So next week and the week after, we'll be going over a whole bunch of classic formulas, state board formulas. Okay. So before we break up, any questions? Otherwise, want to be prepared. We're going to rock it on like promote urination and then also at least discussion of warm the interior, and hopefully we get into the formulas too. Okay, then enjoy your lunch and we'll see you next week, 9 o'clock. And then if you have questions, Joe, Yahoo, you're welcome to send them off my way. Okay.
Thank you.